Now I'm very excited to welcome back one of my favorite guests in Mr. Will Hill from Bear Bets VEASAN and the Should Have Bet More podcast. You can follow Will on X at not the Will Hill. Will, thanks for coming back on the show, my man. How are we less than a month away from the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, what's going on, man? Good to be on with you. And words that sound good to say, feel good to hear. The final weekend of February. The final weekend of February means March. It means from a content standpoint, no more NBA All-Star weekend and regular season college basketball. We can kind of get down to these conference tournaments, and that means baseball's around the corner. So a good time of the year, kind of get through the doldrums between between the end of the Super Bowl, between the end of football and the start of March Madness. It can be a tough couple of weeks, but it's kind of a relaxing couple of weeks. I don't know how you feel, where there's less to do. You kind of catch up on some TV shows. There's not it's not the grind of football season. It is nice to catch your breath for a little bit, but I'm excited for these conference tournaments to get going here pretty soon.
Yeah, from a busy standpoint, I'm definitely doing less on that side. My handicapping is mostly at night, a little bit in the morning. I'm still watching a lot of basketball. I can only take so much during the day, though. It's like once in a while, I'll just kind of follow along in the night game, maybe watch a show if that's what the family wants to. Of course, you gotta keep the wife happy. But man, I'll tell you this. It's just crazy how fast it happened. It's funny how the NFL just ends, and the NFL might even go a week later. Well, when they add that 18th game that is going to happen, it's going to be President's Day that the Super Bowl, will come right before, and President's Day will follow because it's an excuse to have Monday off. That's what I think that's going to happen.
Oh, absolutely. And 18 is more of a round number, no more odd number of home games or road games, and pretty soon, I think the NFL is going to get to the point where it's going to be on every night of the week. I think that's what they want. Their ultimate goal to just, it's almost like The Wire, where they want every corner, man. No more your corner and my corner. It's, what, Christmas used to be NBA's day? Not anymore. It's our day. It's all about, and they promote it as, it's about family. No, it's about you want every last dollar. You want every day of the week. And look, it's a great product. We all love it. We'll all be sitting here. We can make fun of them for it, but we're all going to be watching all of these games, no matter how many games they expand to. So. The NFL, it's only growing, believe it or not.
It's still growing somehow, and the product, I think it's taken a hit, but it has been great, so it's still better than what else we have. So I agree with that. The hockey product's actually kind of cool tonight, and by the time this podcast comes out, people are going to see the results of the USA against Canada after all that controversy. Wow, did that controversy probably bring to advertisers another 15 million people watching this thing, Will?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's the perfect time of year for it with it is the perfect time of year for it. It's a perfect year for it. I don't know how sustainable it is if you're going to do this like every year. The lore of it will probably wear off, but for 1 year, and maybe you do it like every other year, I think it could work, and I think it has worked.
Yeah, it has worked for them, and then the NBA kind of lost some ratings, but maybe they should start thinking about doing something similar. But obviously that cuts into the Olympics a little bit too, where you have your countries kind of playing against each other, but it could be a precursor to the Olympics as well. But hey, man, it's funny. We talk about we have all this time, and then we have baseball around the corner too. Now I do some casual baseball reading every once in a while too. Trying to brush up. I'm not like a hurry as like it's like a August or something, trying to get up to date with the NFL and in college football. But man, you're a great baseball bettor, and you're a big baseball fan, so you're a perfect person to ask some of this stuff. I want to get into a little baseball, and let's start out in your neck of the woods. I mean, you got the Yankees who made it to the World Series last year. You got the Mets who made some noise in the off season. I think their season win totals are pretty close in total wins. I thought it was around 91 for them. I'll double check that. But who has the better chance of winning more games between the Mets and Yankees?
I'll say the Yankees, just because I don't love the Mets starting pitch. I mean, look, both win totals are a win apart. I think last time I looked, the Yankees were 92.5, Mets were 91.5. So it's not like you're talking about a big gap between the teams. Mets have some starting pitching issues, though. Senga's one of their better pitchers, but he's injury prone. They already lost Frankie Montas. They're trying to convert Clay Holmes from a short reliever into a starter. And they're in a division where, all right, the Marlins, that's a layup. They don't have much of a team. They got good pitching when they're healthy. Nationals are an upcoming team, and then you've got Atlanta and Philly, which are two of maybe the 5 or 6 best teams in all of baseball. Yankees division's not quite that good. I think Boston's going to be better, and I think Baltimore is good, but Toronto, Tampa, those teams aren't quite as strong. So I think the Yankees are in just a better situation in terms of the divisions. I'll give the Yankees an extra win or two just because of the advantage in the pitching, especially the starting pitching.
Yeah, man. It's on DraftKings. The Yankees are 91.5 juice to the over -120, and the Mets are 90.5 flat
There you go.
at -110. So the market's saying that. It's interesting. I almost think that the Mets, if they figure out their pitching, might even have a little bit better of a team because of their hitting now with Soto and some of those guys. But Lindor, he needs to have another great year. I expect it. But at the same time, the Yankees, I feel, have the easier division, and I would say that's why they're probably more favored than the Mets to win their division. The Mets are actually third to win their division, right?
Yeah, and it's not by a lot. You can kind of throw a blanket over those 3 teams, but you have 2 real powerhouse teams. It's it's situation. It's really unbalanced because the National League now, with Corbin Burns going to Arizona, all of the Dodgers just absorb exorbitant moves in terms of adding guys. I mean, Dodgers, Mets, Braves, Phillies. You throw in the Diamondbacks. Padres still have a good team. Brewers were good last year. You've got maybe like 6 of the 7 best teams in the National League. Where the American League, all right, the Astros are in a rebuild. The Yankees are a good team. They're not a great team. None of the teams in the AL Central are great. Texas is, they got questions. Seattle got good pitching, but can't. Hey, you get the idea. The much stronger teams are in the National League.
Yeah, that's for sure, and it's why it's going to be so interesting. But it's funny when you say that because I still think it's the Dodgers and everybody else in the National League, man. I mean, there's just so stacked, and I look at it was plus 350, plus 400 maybe a month ago, and I looked today, it was like plus 250 in some books, plus 350 to freaking win the World Series like this early, man. It's not like there's zero value of taking something like that when you can just kind of bet them during the playoffs and bet their series and money line roll over their series, and do it that way. But man, I can't see the Dodgers not winning it. It's just, they're just that good right now, man. I think there'd be catastrophic injuries and multiple accounts that would slow them down a little.
Yeah. I mean, you look at the team, it's basically, it's like an all-star team. They've got, and you could say, oh, well, what if injuries happen? Injuries happened last year and they still won. I mean, they had a ton of injuries to their pitching staff. They've got like 12, 15 deep, which is smart because you're going to need them. They've got guys that are injury prone, but they figure, you know what? We'll take a chance on these injury prone pitchers, but we'll back them up with other pitchers. And you figure if you out of 15 pitchers, by the time October comes around, 3 or 4 of them will be healthy. And that's really all you need, especially with that lineup. The bullpen's good. They've got a bunch of hard throwers and they're just relentless in terms of adding talent. So yeah, the Dodgers are a clear favorite and that's justified. And not that there's value in that number, but that is they are a justified, absolutely legitimate powerhouse of a team.
Yeah, they certainly are, man. So it's hard. It's hard to talk about I believe this team's got a chance. I don't, because I don't believe anybody's got a chance unless it just happens to win 4 out of 7 in the World Series, But what I do like to talk about is maybe a sleeper. Who's somebody that can make. I mean, and this is all price dependent, really, because we're a sports betting show. I mean, like who's a sleeper that just might sneak into the playoffs on a good price, maybe even win the division.
I hate to say it as a Yankee fan, but I like what the Red Sox have done. You add Garrett Crochet, you add Walker Buehler from the Dodgers. Now they got Bregman. They paid him too much money, but he's a good player, a winning player, good defensively. They've got some younger players too coming that you can either call up in the middle of the season to help your team or to use as trade chips. They were a decent team last year with Devers and Jarren Duran. They've got a good manager, and their best player is Devers, and he owns the Yankees. He owns Garrett Cole, their best pitcher. So there's a lot of things that they give the Yankees a hard time. So the Red Sox making a run and being right there to win a division wouldn't shock me. Once you get in, anything can happen. And I'll give you one of the National League too. I'll say the Reds. I think the Reds with Terry Francona, more of an adult in the room. They've underachieved the last couple of years, but they've got a lot of talent. They've got pretty good pitching. They got to keep the pitching healthy. Hunter Green and Lodolo, these guys got to stay on the mound. And that's a theme with a lot of these teams because, you're seeing this in baseball. These young, hard throwers, they throw so hard, it's just hard to keep them on the mound. It's the wear and tear on the armor. You guys throw 100 miles an hour, and it's just, man, the human body's not built to keep these guys healthy at such a young age, throwing this hard. But if they can keep their pitching healthy, they add Brady Singer to the rotation. They were actually +5 in terms of runs scored last year, and they were way under 500. So there's some positive regression coming in one-run games where they were terrible last year. I think the Reds could be a sleeper team. I think +675 to win a division. That is not a bad number for them at all.
Yeah, if they can get their pitching together, they're definitely got some hitters with De La Cruz there and a couple guys. So I guess the theme is the word red. Red Sox. We got the Reds for your sleepers. It's a red sleeper day for Will Hill, and I see that. You make some good points, and the Red Sox did a few things in the offseason here, so that makes sense. I'm gonna being the price. I'm not a big believer, and I'm a Cubs fan. I'm not a big believer in that division at all. In the Central, I think it's really up for grabs. So that's why I kind of like what you said with the Reds.
Good point.
I was going to even say the Pirates, man, believe it or not, because they have the longest odds at 9-1 to win it. And maybe you do this. Maybe you just throw a sprinkle on the 9-1 to win a division. You throw a sprinkle on, maybe making the playoffs. Obviously you're going to have contenders, and with Arizona, like you said, they're going to sneak up some wild cards. But maybe the Pirates just get through some of these teams a little bit easier, and they still have that stud of a starting pitcher there that deserved Rookie of the Year. And I think that the Pirates, they got their old guy back. Names are terrible with me. Andrew McCutchen. Maybe McCutchen just finds a little bit of life at. They got signed Tommy Pham. With Paul Skeens, and maybe Mitch Keller does something. And I think that they who knows? It could be like a one-game decision at the end, Will. And 9-1's not bad.
I could see it. It's not bad. That's really not a bad one. It'd be good for baseball if they were good. They haven't been good in a while. Their owners are terrible in terms of spending the money. But I also hope, for the sake of baseball, speaking of staying healthy, that Skeens can stay healthy. That's a guy when you watch him 103, 10, whatever he's throwing, you wonder if the wear and tear on the arm can hold up. He's almost the face of baseball. I know it's Judge and it's Ohtani. He's almost the face of baseball. I mean, it's the mustache, throwing 100 miles an hour. He's got the famous girlfriend. There's a lot of boxes he checks, and he had the college baseball lead up too, where people saw him at LSU, which we don't always get that. These guys just come out of the minors. They kind of come out of nowhere. With college baseball being more popular, we had that run up. All right, we know him from LSU, and now we know him in the majors. So no, I like that pick, and I agree. It's a good point about that division. That's not a division with the Dodgers or the Mets or the Braves or the Phillies. That's one where you get 88, 89 wins and things break your way. Who knows? And that's the other thing too. You could bet something like the Pirates at 9-1. They've got a good April. That doesn't have to be your final bet on that division. That could set yourself up in a position where, all right, now you can hedge. Now you can maybe take the Reds or take the Cubs. That could just be, a jumping off point where you put that in your pocket and you kind of play off it.
That's a fantastic point. It's not like you can stop betting and obviously hedge and do things with your future bets. And, there's, maybe you look at their schedules and see who's got maybe the easier April, who's got the easier May, and decide when you want to take a hit on somebody else. So what's gotten popular is just betting which team wins the most games in a month. That's kind of fun to do too. So we're going to be looking at all that coming up for Major League Baseball. So
that's a good one. Last one. And then I think the Dodgers, I saw DraftKings had Dodgers -140 most wins. That to me is light. That to me is I know it's chalky. I know it's not, not clever or anything. To me, that's, I saw that a couple of days ago. The problem with this stuff, you start betting this stuff and we're still in February. This stuff doesn't cash till October. So there's a bankroll management issue of like, unless you're betting on credit, do you really want to tie up your money, even if it's a good bet? What could you have done with that money? And you could have rolled it over with other good bets and made more off it just by not betting other stuff. But if your bankroll's big enough and you can sustain tying up money on good solid bets, it is worth tying it up for some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The Dodgers clearly have the easiest road just because of how stacked they are. And it's really, the Giants scare you? Do the Rockies scare you? Not really. I mean, they're going to be mostly losses. They'll sneak a game here and there against the Dodgers, maybe one or two, but in general, the Dodgers are going to, those are almost painted wins for them, So yeah, good call. If you want to tie up your money, and the thing is, like, you're taking -140, it's like, you better be sure you're a profit. Make sure you're going to make some profit when you're betting this year, because that's not a terrible thing for such a like something you call sure thing. I would say maybe there's a 66% chance they're going to do that, and it should be minus 200. So that's value. There's value in that, and that's what we should look for as bettors. Well, I ask right now. I mean, it's early. Who wins the World Series? Are you kind of with me on that?
Yeah, I'll go Dodgers.
Yeah. It's hard to get that one wrong. Why? I like being right too. And if I guess if I was looking for a sleeper, I would definitely look for something in the American League. I wouldn't look for anything in the National League, because if it's not the Dodgers that are representing in the World Series, then it's certainly up for grabs, though. But my research is still going to go on, and I'll pick the Dodgers. But maybe we can find some value in the AL. Well, let's talk some college basketball, my man, because that's what's rolling right now. I'm sure everybody remembers you picking Florida Atlantic a couple years ago from this show and your show and these shows, and you were right. That was so fun and exciting to hit. I think you got well over 50-1 or something for them to get to the Final Four, which was a fantastic bet. But yeah, it's always fun to keep that thing going. So let's talk a little buy low, sell high, and I always like to do that because it's a good exercise on something you're kind of forecasting. Maybe it's not the next game you like, but it could be one in the future that you want to fade them, or you just think this team has overachieved. I'll start with a buy low. I'm going to go with Xavier. With the thing with Xavier, and to be honest with you, the market's really good in these teams this year. I think the Ken Palms and the Bartorviks and the Haslametrics are really right on the shot qualities on where they're ranking these teams. But what I like about Xavier is just how low they are. I mean, they're 51st on Ken Palm, and when you got a coach like Sean Miller, he's going to make a push to try to make the postseason, and they don't have that big non-conference win. And Sean Miller knows that. He's not stupid. He's going to get these kids motivated to win. He's got Seton Hall on deck. It's an away game. You just can't drop that one. But he's got Creighton where he can make some noise. If he can, win against Creighton, win out, and maybe make some noise in the Big East tournament, I think that's where you're going to get some ATS love for Xavier, making sure that they win these games. Will, what about you for a buy low?
Yeah, I like the Xavier one. That's a good call. This one's ugly. They've played terribly. They've just had loss after loss after. I'm going to go Illinois. I still think there's something there with them. They're, they've got a lot of talent. They've got some NBA talent. I like the coach in Underwood. They're just, you always hear peaking at the right. Oh, they're getting hot at the right time. Teams that are winning. Oh, they're peaking. Maybe they're just playing terribly at the right time. Maybe you want to get your bad basketball out of the way in February. Nobody's going to remember a bad stretch in February. It was 2 years ago where UConn was really bad in conference play, really bad. Just a rough stretch in the Big East. I think they might have finished like 4th or 5th, maybe even lower in the Big East. They went in the tournament and they mopped the floor with everybody. Not saying I expect Illinois to do that. Not even saying I expect Illinois to win a championship. But there's a flip side of this Illinois team. They're not this bad. So getting them at some really long shot numbers, I don't think is the worst idea. I just think there is a better version of this Illinois team that we're going to see.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great call right there. And what's interesting is they play Duke this weekend on a neutral floor in the Madison Square Garden. Maybe we can touch on that game a little bit here, which is going to be kind of like a desperation spot for
that. Is a very late out of conference marquee game. We usually don't get these. I can't remember. Back maybe like a decade ago, we used to have this thing. It was called like a bracket buster weekend. We would have these all mid majors would play each other late in the season. I don't know if you remember that, but that wasn't for these power conference. I mean, I can't remember unless I'm just misremembering or it's escaping me. An ACC versus a Big Ten, basically at the end of the regular season. That is not something that's common. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. And at first glance, I was like, "Oh, this must have got postponed because of some sickness or something." But no, this was scheduled, and it's his head scratcher. But I think it's awesome. But it's also, but here's the thing, dude. I've capitalized on these. I remember all the way up until this year, you used to have that SEC versus
Big Ten challenge.
Big Ten. It was Big 12 actually that happened in January. SEC Big 10, I think, might have happened.
Big 10 maybe.
Yeah. You had ACC Big East too, because I remember taking Marquette in January. But you had those fun situations because it was a distraction for the good teams. It was a distraction for the teams trying to win their conference, and they're just like, "What the hell do we have to do this for?" This late in January, right? So it would always be a good fade on the good team, and then the team that needs it, I mean, that would be Illinois. that would be the look, really. And we got to talk about that game. We'll get to that game, but I like your buy low. And let's talk sell high now, Will. Do you have a sell high team for us?
I'm going to go Michigan. They turn the ball over a lot. I know they've got a lot of size. By the way, they have the coolest nickname, Area 51, because Golden's number 50 and Danny Wolf, the Yale transfer, is number 1. That's a cool nickname. And we don't have a lot of nicknames in sports. I remember, like, you and I are around the same age. When you were younger, like, players had cool nicknames, teams had cool nicknames. I don't know. We've just gotten soft in our culture where these nicknames are just people don't want to be controversial or whatever. People aren't as clever. We don't get as many nicknames anymore. So I like the Area 51, but they turn the ball over a lot. And this is our, speaking of FAU, this is the old coach. This is the old Vlad Golden. This is the remnants of that FAU team. But I don't like teams that don't take care of the ball. I don't think they defend great. You don't win with size in the NCAA tournament. It's really you win with guard play. So I'm looking to sell high on this Michigan team.
No disagreement, man. They've been winning a lot of one-score games.
Yep.
If you look at them, I mean, I remember taking Michigan minus like 7.5, right, against Penn State. I think it closes at like 9 or something, right? So I'm like, oh yeah, we got some line value. That hasn't been so good to me this year. But anyway, Michigan beats them by 3 points, or 4 points. A Penn State team, they go to Rutgers, win by 3. Oregon at home, win by 4. Indiana away, win by 3. Purdue at home, win by 2, which is more understandable. But then Ohio State, they win by 3 points. I mean, this is just the last games, until you go all the way back to their loss against Purdue. This team is, in the luck factor, really lucking out on some of those non-covering games. So I agree with you. And we'll be talking about this game against Sparty for that big rivalry coming up here on Friday. My sell high team, got to pull it up again. It's kind of Tennessee. Yeah, it's Tennessee. I got a couple, I guess, I could have mentioned. But I don't like Rick Barnes this late in the season. I definitely don't like him in tournaments. And I know, the last year he's bucked that a little bit and make it to Elite 8 and well-deserved and all that. But, this Tennessee team just doesn't have they're kind of like Houston to me, but a little worse. I think Houston's got more clutch in them. But every time, they leave, they're playing some really close games unless they're playing tomato cans. They lose to Kentucky, an injured Kentucky team, by 11 points, double digits. Kentucky, they actually lost 2 games to Kentucky. They lost away at Vanderbilt, and that's kind of seriously, your in-state rival, you lose, but hey, they get Vanderbilt back, and they only win by 5 points to Vanderbilt just on Saturday. So this is going to be an interesting game coming up against Texas A&M this week. I already got a feeler on this one where I'm going to go, but Tennessee has not impressed me that much, and I just don't think they're a top 6 or 7 team. They're probably a top 12 to 15 team, in my opinion, Will. So we might get some value fading them here in the near future.
It's one of my games this weekend, so you have agreement for me.
All right, well, we'll get to that. And seeing that we are going to run right here into Friday, there is that fantastic matchup that I already talked a little bit about. Michigan State versus Michigan. Michigan -2. I'm projecting maybe -1. Ken Pom shows -2. I'm just going to go by that for now because I think it's going to hover between 1 and 3. The total is 150. If you look at the history of these teams, Will, 5-5 to the over and under, so it's right even the last 10 games. Michigan State is 6-4 ATS in their last few games. Will, since you sold high on Michigan, what are you doing for this game on Friday?
I would like Michigan State. I'm looking to fade Michigan for all the reasons we just mentioned, the close losses. And how about Sunday in Ohio State? Ohio State's down by 2. They've got a wide open layup. Danny Wolf slips, loses his footing. Kid for Ohio State's got a wide open, clean, point blank look. Not only misses, he airballs, and he airballed by a lot, which was strange. I think he was so open, he almost got spooked by it. But no, I'd be looking to play Michigan State here.
Oh man, I know that feeling. It's like you're in the end zone. The ball comes to you. It's like nobody's around you, but you just have to drop it somehow. It's like automatic. You can't explain why that happens. Maybe that's what happened to that kid. I feel bad for him. But yeah, that's I don't disagree. Michigan State is the team that can defend a little bit more down low. Michigan State, you really have to worry about, Area 51, right? The two big guys, Wolf and what's his name? And that's the thing, Wolf
Golden,
and
Vlad Golden.
Yeah, the Golden Boy, Vladislav Golden, right? So I think that they can defend that. And Michigan State has better guard play. Michigan State has Xavier Booker. He's going to play, over a third of the minutes. He's 6'11". They got Zapala, who's 7 feet tall, that plays over a third of the game. So they're going to rotate those guys with Jackson Kohler as well. So those guys are going to, be able to hack a little bit. They're not going to worry too much about foul trouble because they also have Carson Cooper. They're going to throw him in to hack the big guys, stop the easy buckets. And I think just by doing that, you're going to limit them a little bit. Michigan, an okay free throw shooting team, pretty average, but Michigan State's really got the better guard play. And that's where Michigan State's really trying to protect here. What's really interesting for me is I have a future on Michigan at 9-1 to win the Big Ten, and I have Wisconsin at 20-1 to win the Big Ten. The only one that's in my way, Will, is Michigan State, because that's the one I don't have a future on. So I'm actually going to be hedging this. I'm going to be, and you know what? I could still screw this up. They could lose this, and they could all of a sudden Wisconsin and Michigan loses more down the stretch. But it's just one of those situations where I think that Michigan State on the money line not only is a good hedge, but it's a good cut. It's a good bet because I think the matchup really favors Michigan State finally, and Michigan can just finally go away here at home. So I have agreement here, and I also kind of like the under. Will, I think you're going to get a total of 150, right? Maybe 149, something like that. I think this game's going to mean so much to somebody that Michigan's not going to play that massive pace that they always play. They're not going to be able to play that pace because they're going to run against a big wall against Michigan State. They're going to have to pass the ball out, Will. So I'm going to make an official play on the under at 149, 150. I'll call 149 unless we can get better for Michigan State.
The only thing that concerns me, Big Ten road officials here. That always concerns me. Big Ten is that's a conference where I know the home court and these officials tend to favor the home team anyway, but the Big Ten, it can be egregious sometimes. That's the only concern.
It is very egregious. Humans and I talked about that last week. As a matter of fact, he had Missouri as a sleeper team. Look at the hell Missouri's been doing the last few weeks. Michigan will have the refs, but at the same time, Izzo knows how to work them refs too. Red in the face, Izzo, and I think it's gonna be such a big watch game that I hope the refs don't want to get involved as much as they normally do, and that favors the under. So we'll see what happens with that. But it's great to talk about with the Big Ten because that conference more than anybody else has the home cooking, let's say. Michigan Friday's got some other pretty big games. I might key in on a Marquette road against Villanova. I love fading Kyle Neptune. He just choked it away against UConn the other night. Holy cow. Neptune is just notorious for choking. I think Marquette is going to roll them, and they're only going to be like a 2-point favorite, maybe a 1-point favorite. I'll probably do that. But, Friday you just have mostly Maction. See if Akron plays, man. Geez, where they are going to lose. And you'll have some Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference too on Friday. Let's move on to the big day then, Saturday. And we have another massive fun slate of college basketball. And let's go right to BYU versus Arizona. BYU is, I'm projecting like a 7.5 road dog here. Arizona should be a home favorite, about 7.5. The total I'm just picking right off Ken Palm at 153 because I think it's going to be around that. Will, you pick this one. What are your thoughts?
Well, I like Arizona, so I'm hoping it's a little lighter. I remember they played about 2-3 weeks ago, and it was a small BYU favorite. I think BYU closed maybe 3 in that game. So you know what? If you flip, home courts were 3, 3.5, 7. Obviously, it's not going to be Arizona by 3, but I was hoping more like a 4.5, 5. But I'm not sure I'm going to get it. But I don't like this BYU team away from home. I like them at home. That was a great spot for them against Kansas. That was a good performance. But you're fading them. If you're taking Arizona, you're fading BYU off of that performance. You have an Arizona team who I know Caleb Love is super hot and cold, and man, I just seem to always be on the wrong side of him. So you know what? If I do bet Arizona, which I'm going to do here, you probably know that maybe an under on Caleb Love's points is a good bet because I just never seem to be on the right side of his variance. Man, he is such a hot and cold player. But I just think Arizona's more athletic for that than them. I think you get BYU away from home. That's an issue. I like the way Arizona defends. Good win at Baylor. They probably should have won that game against Houston, too. I had them last Saturday. They were up by 7.
I had 2.5. I waited the whole freaking day for that 2.5, Will.
And we couldn't get a back door. We threw the ball away on the final play. We
were
up
right through his hands, too.
Right through his hands. And we settled for a 3-2 when it was a 3-point game. You could have just gone to the basket. Who knows? Maybe you get fouled. Maybe you get an and one. Maybe they just give you the layup and make Houston make free throws because they're not a good free throw shooting team. But we were up 7. And Arizona was up 7, and it looked like they got a steal to go the other way. I don't know if you remember the play pretty late in the game to maybe go up 9. They called a really, I want to say a touch foul. It was more like a phantom foul. Houston scored, cut it to 5. Houston dominated the rest of the game. So maybe there's a little value here with Arizona, you know, based on the fact that game was a loss instead of a win. I think this Arizona team checks a lot of boxes for me.
They do check a lot of boxes, and they've gotten much better since that UCLA loss way back in mid-December. You know, losing away is what they did, and that's it. You know, at home, they've been fantastic, beating Texas Tech by 9 points at home. You know, a very good Texas Tech team. They had that shot against Iowa State to force overtime, which Iowa State is a badass team. And, you know, they ended up covering because of that. They won by 11 points. Imagine having a dog playing Iowa State then. That sounds like what happens to me lately. I mean, big wins. You know, BYU, they won away 85-74. So clearly they have the way to beat this team. You know, they have the plans to beat them. So I think that could be a good play. I do want a 7, Will. So we'll see if we can get a 7. Maybe you get some love for the BYU Kansas State wins. You know, that's what I'm hoping. Great place to fade BYU after a Kansas win. So I'm with you. Let's move on to the next game. Iowa State versus Houston, probably the biggest game of the weekend, Will. And it's in the Big 12. You know, KenPom shows 9. I don't think it's going to be 9. I'm projecting -7. I think that they're going to respect the total on this being lower, and the market's going to respect Iowa State a little bit more. So you're probably going to see a 7. God forbid if it's a 9, you better jump on it. I think Iowa State knows how to play Houston. You know, if you looked at last year, they covered both times. They almost did cover at the end of
Killed them in the Big 12 title game, I think, right?
Destroyed them in the Big 12 title game. And, you know, does Houston remember that? I don't know. Did they play yet this year? I think that they didn't play this year. So maybe Houston, maybe they kept the receipts. You know, maybe Houston, wants to really make a statement because of that. But, you know, Houston, they've been crazy shooting good threes. And it's not even just from LJ Cryer. It's a lot from Emmanuel Sharp and Uzan. You know, they're getting some production from 3 or 4 guys, and the rest are just really playing defense, you know, and they're playing good defense, and they slow the game down. That's why you're going to get a low total. But my worry about is that it's efficient. You might get 63 possessions in this game, and they'll still go over 135 because these are so, you know, 2 efficient teams playing each other. But Iowa State, man, they know that they need to win this game too because they're trying to get back into that 2 seed, 1 seed area. You know, they dropped that 3 in a row: Arizona, Kansas State, and at Kansas. And Iowa State was a bad road team, but you know they can pick it up, and I think they know how to play enough to cover a team like Houston. Houston's biggest problem, Will, their consistency. There's a consistency rating on Haslametrics. They're 349th in consistency. So you're never really going to know what you're going to get with this team. And if you're going to get a downswing with them, let's say Iowa State's up at halftime, you can always buy back. You know, it's a great middle type game opportunity if I take the dog right now and kind of see how the game plays, and maybe even a full buyback. Maybe just kind of say I'll get juiced out if it don't happen. But I think Iowa State, anything 7 or better should be a play.
I like it. And that game in the Big 12 title game sticks out to me. I was like, all right, they know how to play this team. Houston, I still think, has some flaws in terms of they don't have a traditional big. They don't shoot the ball great at times. They don't shoot free throws well. So I would agree here with your Iowa State play. I would love to get a 7, 7.5. I would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. And any favorite that shoots bad free throws is a huge red flag. So
Yep.
I always kind of go by that. Let's move on to the next game, and I'll make Iowa State +7 or better a podcast play. Tennessee versus Texas A&M. It shows Tennessee is -2 on Ken Palm. I'm not buying that. I think it's going to be pick 'em. If it is -2, then great, because you already kind of heard what I had to say about this. But you're going to get another very low total of 126. Texas A&M off, kind of looking at a little bit of an embarrassing performance against Mississippi State. Now, I kind of faded. I was wrong, and I faded Mississippi State off the Mississippi win, even though they were at home against A&M. I kind of thought that it was a good spot for them to falter, and I got the 3.5, or I got 4.5. It closes at 2.5, and I still lost because they got beat by 16 points. But I'm not sure if that's really Texas A&M. But what are your thoughts on this game? Are you going to be on that side?
I like A&M. I agree with all of your points on Tennessee being a team you can't trust. Rick Barnes, I mean, let's face it, it's a long time ago now, but this is a guy who had Kevin Durant on his team and a couple of other NBA players. I don't even think he made the Sweet 16. He was out pretty quickly in the tournament. So that tells you everything you need to know about Rick Barnes. He constantly underachieves. There's a reason, he's been a fade in March. And I like this A&M team. They win the possession game, which there's so many hidden things in terms of them. Offensive rebounds, turn you over, don't turn it over. When you get those extra possessions as you get closer to March here, that is so key in these close games, especially in a game with this where you've got two of the top 5 or 6 teams in terms of defensive efficiency, according to Ken Palm. It'll be close. It'll be low scoring. If you can steal possessions, that's a major bonus for you. And Tennessee has just not shot the ball well on the road. You look at their 2-point makes on the road. It's been really bad. So I don't trust this Tennessee offense to travel. I think A&M gets a win. I would love to get 2. I'm okay with the pick 'em. I will definitely be on A&M here this weekend.
Yeah, me too. 100% pick them. I mean, hopefully I don't have to lay 1.5. I would like this at pick 'em. I think that get it early enough. I think that the market's going to agree with us though, and I think it's going to be no secret that people are going to be looking to fade Tennessee. So I think this number could get away from you if you're too late on it. Tennessee ranking 231st in away home splits. So they're definitely a much better home team, but Texas A&M a much better home team, 21st. If you look at some of these stats, Tennessee doesn't really have any big favorite situations here because near proximity and 3 points. Texas A&M's defense is better than their offense, but it's the same way on the other side. Don't get me wrong, but I think that Tennessee's biggest advantage this year was rebounding, but they're finally going to be playing a team that can rebound just as good or better, being that A&M is number 1 in rebounds. A&M chucks up some points from threes and some twos, and they just make sure they clean it up at the boards, and that's kind of what they live off of. But it's a good strategy. And it's not like you're laying points with A&M, who's a bad free throw shooting team. You're looking at pick 'em. So, it's a situation where I'd feel a lot safer backing a coach like Buzz Williams, obviously, over Rick Barnes, too. So I'm with you. Let's take Texas A&M at pick 'em for this show. Let's move on to the next one. I got a Sunday game, and I think you have one as well. Purdue versus Indiana. I'm going to say Indiana's +5, and I'm going to put the total at 149 because that's where I think it's kind of going to be. Purdue's going to get some respect here. This is a slump buster, man. This is definitely a slump buster for Purdue. They're 3 losses in a row. They're not happy. They're just too well of a coach team under Matt Painter. They're too good of an efficient team to let that handle. They're going to be in their state, playing Indiana. So it's not like a bad travel spot. And I do know the Big Ten officials are really rough on away teams, but it's Purdue, where the Big Ten officials have kind of liked the last few years. We've been complaining about them for a while, but you're looking at 287th in effective field goal percentage for Indiana against 13 for Purdue. Purdue could blow this team out as a road favorite, in my opinion. This is the road favorite I like of the weekend. I'm going to be laying up to 6 or 7 points. I'm going to say it's going to be 5 with Purdue, Will.
Yeah, it's 6 or 7. Once you get to 3 possessions, that's too rich for my blood. If it were 7, it's a stay away. 6, I'd be interested in Purdue. At 5, I would definitely lay it. So that's kind of where I would love to lay a 5. I just anything 6, 6.5 and above, it starts to get a little hairy. But I agree. I think this is a game where Purdue could pull away here.
You know what Ken Pom has is Purdue by 4. I would love a 4. I don't think it's going to be 4. I think it's not going to be 6 or 7 because of that too. Haslametrics has Purdue by 5, and I think Bart Torvik. And it's good to look at these sites because it's always kind of a function of these sites if you kind of look at them. Purdue -5 at Bart Torvik, so you're going to get a 5 most likely, at least at opener here. And a lot of people go towards the home dogs in the Big Ten. So even if you get a 5, that thing could move to 4 a little bit.
Good
So
point.
I went completely rush at a 5. I think I would let it marinate for a little bit. But you have a fun game that you picked on Sunday with a little UConn versus the Johnnies, and St. John's well in control right now to win the Big East outright by themselves for the 2025 regular season. I'm saying it's going to be 7.5, man. This is, well, Ken Palm's got, what, 8? I mean, that's the problem. If you're looking towards the Johnnies, you're not getting a discount no more, my man. Oh, the way UConn lost to Seton Hall, the way they had to come back against Nova, Ken Palm's got 8. Ken Palm's got 8. I'm going to say it's 7.5. If it's 7, there you go. That's better. But with a total of about 142. Will, what do you got?
I will be taking UConn at those numbers. It's not pretty, but these teams met not that long ago. It was the Friday of Super Bowl weekend, and the line closed. I think UConn 4.5 favorites in that spot. And you can say, oh, that was the wrong number. Things have changed since. It's not that long ago. A 12-point adjustment based on home court advantage. UConn is plenty comfortable at MSG. They have a lot of fans there, so it's not going to be a true home court. Now, it's not going to be, their second home there playing St. John's because there's going to be a lot of St. John's fans, but I'm looking for more of a split crowd. That game was a game where UConn dominated early. They just turned the ball over a ton. So maybe that's something that they clean up. This will be another close game. I just think, how often can you get Hurley's team getting 7.5, 8 points? I will be on UConn. I think the 12-point adjustment or so is an overreaction.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I love how you talked about they were 4.5-point favorites. I mean, has the teams changed that much? If anything, McNeely's more healthy.
Exactly.
On the UConn
That was
side,
his first
right?
game back. That was his first game back.
It was his first game back, and you can give him a pass for that. God, I'm with you now. I was kind of like scissoring between the sides. I'm with you. And you know what? I shied away. I told you probably a month ago that UConn was one of those that could cut down the nets. I'm shying more away from that statement, but I will say they still have the pedigree once they hit the tournament, and you never know what happens in the tournament, right? So it wouldn't shock me if they could move up to the Final Four at some point. They're not going to be one of my picks. They kind of dropped out of my top teams for that, but this is a spot where they're going to be very disrespected, and Dan Hurley's going to be up their A's. He's going to be ready to motivate this team. And the Johnnies, they don't need to win by 7 points. They can win by 3 points. They're fine with that. They're a defensive team. They're shooting like 29% from 3. So it's not like they have a lot of opportunity to really pull ahead. So I'll be on UConn as well, probably a small money line play as well. Someone commented, live in Iowa for 25 years. I never saw one single North Carolina anything. Now at my gym, I've seen 3 hoodies and 1 North Carolina t-shirt since they hired Belichick. Well, look at that. The Belichick. Well, you have to understand, Jessica, who commented here, that Will is supporting a friend of his named Mike Lombardi, who happened to get the GM job over there. So props to Will for doing that, and Mike Lombardi for getting that awesome job. So, it's not like Will's a closet North Carolina fan, right?
Correct. Yeah. Boy, I still can't believe how that played out. I was doing shows with Lombardi, all that week, Thanksgiving, a couple other times, just normal. I've worked with him for years, just doing spots, not that dissimilar to what we're doing now. And then I was scrolling through Twitter, and Michael Lombardi will be the new GM of UNC football. So, wow. Like, he kept it very close to the vest. Now, granted, his buddy, he's very close with Belichick, and Belichick took the job. So it was in the back of my head, but I kind of thought he was, just retired, happy to be doing media, but he is back in it. So, rooting for him. And it is going to be strange to see Bill Belichick on the college sideline next year. That is going to make the sport more fun, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I guess that was under Matt Human's question. Well, just comment, dynamic duo. Why is Will wearing this? Well, now Matt knows for when the next time you guys get on VSiN, we can discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, here we go. Let's do a little hodgepodge then, Will.
Okay.
It's Saturday's just too good not to. And we mentioned Duke, Illinois. Duke, the number one team in the nation right now, and Illinois, they really faltered and lost a few in a row. You know what's really weird about that Wisconsin game? They didn't shake hands with Wisconsin, but they were sick, and that was the whole thing. They all had the flu or something, and then the coach was trying to tell Greg Gard, he's trying to tell Greg Gard, hey, the reason we're not doing it is because we're all sick, and then it became a big new media thing, and everyone thinks Brad Underwood's full of it and all that. I'm not so sure about that. But what I do know is that Illinois is in a spot where, dude, they got to make some freaking noise here. They were terrible against Wisconsin. And I listened to a lot of Field of 68 and everything, and they kind of nailed it here. As a matter of fact, John Tanji was just on their show last night. The problem with Illinois is that they got that young Jaconius, right? And I'm not even sure if I say his name right. Kasparis Jakunis. He just is not being the real point guard that they need out of him. He's a great ball handler and everything, but he's thinking he's in high school that he can just take it to the hole against these guys, and he's not really setting up the offense. That worries me a little bit about them. But this kind of game goes to what I said about before. It's like more of a distraction for Duke, who's just trying to, keep that one seed and just run through the ACC. And don't get me wrong, they have the ACC wrapped up. I mean, Clemson, they lose 1, 2. Actually, Clemson only lost 2 games, so they can't. So they are thinking about the ACC. They lost to Clemson, so this is just a distraction for Duke. But I mean, I almost think the over. I think that Illinois is going to push them a little bit. They're not used to playing this pretty weak ACC schedule. I don't know if I want to fade Duke, but I can see this game going over. Will.
Yep, over might be a good look. I still have questions about the Duke offense. The Duke defense is obviously really good, but this is going to be a different level of speed. Illinois plays better teams just night in, night out. That is just if you're of a certain age, and not that you and I are that old, but you remember the ACC where it's Antoine Jameson and Vince Carter and all these great teams on North Carolina, and it was just it was such a gauntlet of a schedule. Pitt is terrible. Look at what Notre Dame has become.
Wake Forest,
Virginia Tech, Wake is okay, but I mean, it's a dreadful conference. So yeah, I would look to be backing an Illinois team looking to get back on track here.
Yeah, I would too. It's one of those hold your nose situations too. I'll probably be on the over if it's 155, which Ken Pom says Illinois' defense is taking a hit, but I think Duke's defense is taking a little hit with that injury that they just suffered too. I think it was who was it? It wasn't Proctor. I think it was Evans. They had an injury last game. And he's more of a defensive player, so I think that it was either him or Malik Brown. I don't know. I'll have to take a look at it again. But I was looking at it, and I noticed Duke was injured. John Rothstein just tweeted about it today, and I'm thinking that maybe that they take a little bit more of a hit on their depth and defense. It was kind of like a 6th or 7th guy coming in that happened to. So we'll look at the over. What else do we have for Saturday? Well. Georgia Auburn. I mean, do you want to mess with Auburn?
No. Bama, Kentucky, Bama off a couple losses, and their defense got absolutely shredded Wednesday night against Missouri, who I think is still scoring. So that's that'll be a good bounce back spot, I think, for Bama. But you trust Bama to win by margin with the way they're defending. Maybe a Bama team total over, because I don't like Kentucky's defense, and I think Bama will come out here with a I think they'll shoot the ball better. They'll shoot the ball better at home, and it'll be a focused effort from the Crimson Tide. So maybe just a Bama team total over instead of actually laying the points here.
Yeah, no, I actually think I'd lay with Bama maybe, because it is a great spot for Bama. Kentucky coming off that big, easy Vanderbilt win, but if Butler's still not back, I'm still fading Kentucky. I think that was more about Vanderbilt being bad, and it's all about Butler. Now, Butler, even when he comes back, is still probably going to be 70%. That shoulder injury is probably going to last until he gets surgery. There's a couple guys with those situations here, but I'd be on Bama, and definitely a team total over is a good look for them, because they're not going to slow it down. They might play some better defense though, so you kind of cover yourself in case they don't play better defense with a team total. What about South Carolina? 0-14 in conference play. Do they finally get a win coming up here this weekend they finally get a team that they can beat. I think in Texas. I was on Texas against Kentucky last weekend, and man,
Me too.
I had to bite my, and I had
I
a money
know.
line, dude. And they only won by 4. I think they closed at 3.5. I've been
Oh,
biting
I
my
think they
nails a little
covered
bit.
4.5 in some spots. That line kept going up because I was doing
Oh,
VSiN like an hour before that tip. I said, wow, because I was giving out Texas all day. Then it got up to 4.5. I said, you know what? I've been giving them out at 3.5. If I know it's only a point, but 4, which is end up being funny because yeah, it's only a point, but it ended up being the point. And the way it ended was funny too, because Kentucky, I'm sure you saw, they're throwing the ball away. You know, they're doing everything they can to give it to Texas. Then still Texas gets it to 7, and Kentucky just casually strolls up and hits a 3 from about 45 feet, nothing but net for it to land on 4. I think that pushed it over too. But yeah, that was pulling teeth with Texas last week. Absolutely.
oh God, it was. And then you know what? It just made me want to fade Texas so bad after watching that. And I'm like, oh, I have to wait all the way till next Saturday. And I see freaking South Carolina, the worst team in the SEC, sitting there. And I'm like, you know what? If South Carolina is going to win one game this year, it has to be this one. I guess maybe Arkansas or Georgia at home, but this is the one, man. I'll probably just have to find myself on South Carolina here. You're probably not going to get much value. You're probably going to have to take a +2 or something. It's not like you're protecting yourself from that last shot, right? I do like +2.5 if you can get that, but man, it's that's something I'm going to be keying on too. How about this, Will? Should I be drinking the Kool-Aid here, my man?
You should be. You
Should I
should be.
be drinking the Kool-Aid with my
I
Badgers
don't think
as I
they're good
put my
enough
hat on?
defensively. I don't think they're good enough defensively to win 6. And that formula of like you got to be in the top 20 or 25 defensive efficiency, offensive efficiency, that's pretty strict. That's pretty tried and true. But look, it's a hell of a team. They can score. It's just that I don't know if they're good enough defensively to actually win the whole thing.
Yeah, they're not, dude. And that's what's bugging me. It's like the Big Ten is down, man. And they're running through it and they're doing fun things. But once they face that team like a Texas A&M, a Tennessee, a Houston, where they can just crawl around and they're just a little off on their shooting. It's the end. And that's what scares me about Wisconsin. It's always been the same thing. It's always been a team that can beat anybody, but then can lose to anybody. Just like last year when they lost to James Madison the first game, of the tournament, when they lost to Iowa State, who was really down 2-3 years ago, and
Right.
and that was a bad loss for them. I mean, they're 7th on KenPom. And see, they almost made my teams to fade, my sell high team. But the only reason they didn't is because their next 2 games are at home against Oregon and Washington. I think next week against Michigan State is where I'm going to sell them. And then they have at Minnesota, who's been a little bit more feisty. But I'm still hoping they can win a share of that Big Ten regular title. And I'll tell you this. I have seen some improvement with Stephen Crawl down there on defense, and Nolan Winter has been playing some pretty good defense too. The problem is after those 2 guys, you're not going to find another guy over 6'7". It's just Xavier Amos who's really slow, and Carter Gilmore, and you can't get. They don't have that third big guy that's going to face the SEC team. So the Kool-Aid, unfortunately, is running out for me. I'm just hoping to win a Big Ten title. I don't think they're going to go super far in the dance, Will.
Got to enjoy the ride while you can.
Exactly. I'm enjoying the ride while it's 10. I might take that -10 against Oregon. I might do that. That is going to be a big spread, but why not? I think Oregon's going to fail. Oregon should have lost to Iowa, last night. And that was another loss I had by half point. Iowa, I had +1.5. I should have bought the 2.5. Kicking myself, but Iowa shot 2 last shots and missed them both, and they should have tied or won that game.
I saw that. They missed a wide open, maybe 2 wide open layups. One of them spun out. I was like, how the hell did that not go in? It's kind of nobody around them yet. And they got a last second. They went for the 3 and they almost got a tip in off the block. But yeah, that was one. But that Oregon also deserved, I thought, had a 3. I was shocked they wiped that off. They looked at it for like 10 minutes, which is a whole other thing in college basketball. These reviews are too often. They're too comfortable going to the booth. They last too long. But they took a long look at an Oregon. I think it was a banked in 3, and then eventually wiped it off, which I didn't think there was that much that was conclusive. I thought it was in his hand, but it was just very hard. You didn't have a view of the clock at 0 and the ball still in his hand, but neither here nor there.
Yeah. How come we didn't mention St. Mary's Gonzaga? Jeez, that's like
It's a good one.
I mean, that's like it's like the only really games that are worth talking about in the West Coast Conference. It's Gonzaga when they play St. Mary's, right? And not like Washington State's any good this year, right? So it's like, I mean, St. Mary's beat them at home by 4 points, where a lot of people thought they got some whistles that game, and now
Right.
St. Mary's is still going to be a dog to them by 4 or 5 points on the road. I wish they weren't going to be a dog. I would think that St. Mary's is going to feel disrespected coming into this, and I don't know, man. I don't know what to do with this team, with either team. Gonzaga should be better than what they are, and St. Mary's should be worse than what they are, you know?
I would look towards, if you like Gonzaga, I'd parlay it with the over. If you like St. Mary's, parlay it with the under. I think it's very pace dependent. I think Gonzaga and St. Mary's, the last 4 or 5 times they've played, give them credit. St. Mary's has done a good job of slowing the pace, making it a half court game. And Gonzaga, maybe Gonzaga playing at the Kennel. I think this game is in Gonzaga. It has to have. It has to, because the last game was in St. Mary's. Maybe they can get their pace more, run more. If it's an over game, that favors Gonzaga. If it's an under game, St. Mary's. So we don't talk a lot of parlays, but when they're correlated, that is a good time to play them.
Agreed, because that's either it's going to happen. It's St. Mary's winning or covering and going under. I agree. Hodgepodge. Well, no, actually. Let's move to a sleeper team. Why don't you give, and I got one, a sleeper team to make some noise in the tournament. I got one way out of left field, Will, like way out of left field.
I'll go UC San Diego. I like that team. I hope they get in. I hope they get in at large. They probably will not by noise. Could 2 games and they're in the Sweet 16 and they're the story of the first weekend. I could see that being the case. I'm not sure how much farther than that they go, but they have Sweet 16 markets, and UC San Diego getting into Sweet 16 would be a lot of fun. So that's mine.
The best covering team in all of basketball, UC San Diego, 79.2%, 19 for 5 ATS.
That'll pay the bills.
That'll pay. I mean, it's been paying bills for people. I wish it was me, because I should have been on more. They're relentless, and I don't want to play them. As a Badger fan, I don't want to play them. I do not want to play that team. If you're an SEC team, you don't want to play them.
Nope.
That is one team you certainly want to avoid. So great pick. I'm going to go way out of left field here, and I'm going to go with High Point.
Ooh,
dude. Yep, I'm going with.
I watched them last week. They were on the national game, maybe last Thursday, last Friday. I forget, but they were on recently. I watched them. They're good.
And dude, they're 28th in offensive efficiency, right? And I know their schedule isn't great, but these are adjusted metrics. They're supposed to try to adjust for strength. They're 15th in effective field goal percentage. They're winning most of their games by margin. Their last 3 games they won in double digits. They have some losses. Don't get me wrong. They're not perfect, but it's a dangerous team. And that's why the question was about. I think they have to win the Big South for one. But this is the team that will be like the Baltimore Retrievers that beat Virginia. They could just be that team that just the Oral Roberts, right? The team that just can't stop hitting threes. It's just automatic. And you're like, you're sitting there and your name is freaking Tennessee, or your name is Purdue, and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Tied with 4 minutes to go. The thing you don't want is a 3, 4, or 5 seed when everyone starts to get a little tight.
Everyone gets tight, but man,
and the crowd turns on you. The crowd that's neutral all of a sudden is rooting for the underdog. It's great. I can't wait for it.
Well, I forgot to tell you that I was going to ask you a beer bet banger. So I have one first if you want to think about it, or pass. Any plus money, whatever sport.
You go first. I'll find one.
Well, I'm stealing UConn.
Okay.
I'm stealing UConn because
money line?
It's too good. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a road revenge spot, and there's just too much talk about St. John's now, and it's just they can lose by a lot. But I'm liking UConn as my beer bet banger, and it's probably going to be plus 220, maybe plus 240. I think it'd be something like that.
St. Mary's 18-1 Final Four. Thanks for having me on.
Final Four?
No, 18-1. Why not?
18-1. I love it. 18-1. I do not love 18-1. I mean, why not? St. Mary's defensive team. And you know what's great about their defense is that when it comes to these big tournaments, Offenses don't show up. They get scared. And all of a sudden, if you don't have a defense, if you're like Vanderbilt or something,
Defense
Texas,
travels.
Defense will always travel. Oh, I love it.
And they haven't been able to punch through. They've been one of these like quasi sleeper teams. Seems like every year they run into, like a couple years ago it was UConn, or they kind of flame out at the second round. Maybe this is a year where they get a break in the bracket. Maybe they get an upset around them and they can look up and they're in an Elite Eight. And if they're in an Elite Eight at 18-1, I got some wiggle room the other way. So I'm actually going to bet this. St. Mary's 18-1 to make the Final Four.
I love it. I might sprinkle that with you. So who's cutting down the nets?
I'll go Auburn. I just think they're so battle tested. I hate the same show gave out Dodgers and gave out Auburn to win the time, and it's just boring. But I'll go Auburn. I just think they're battle tested. 15 quad one wins. It's you can make the case that these teams are going to wear each other out, and I don't know that I'd want to win the SEC tournament, but I do think iron sharpens iron. Even though I'm not like a huge Bruce Pearl fan, I do think they check so many boxes. I'm going to go Auburn.
They sure beat Bama in the Iron Bowl last weekend.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny about that? I was on Bama, and they went 5 for 26 from
terrible.
I think some of that was Auburn's defense, but it wasn't all of that.
No.
I'm sticking with Bama just because of right now is a good time to bet Bama too. It's right when their number probably got a little bit better, maybe, and that's what you do. You don't do it after they run through some wins. Wait for a few losses. That's exactly the time to jump on a team like Alabama to make the Final Four. Alabama has fallen, man. They're down to they're plus 170. They didn't fall too much. I got plus 240 when I did it. They're 12-1 now when they were just 8-1 to make it. So it is still a time to bet a team that was just in the Final Four. Everyone's on Florida now. No money on that. But I don't disagree with the pick. I'm just sticking with Bama. Powerhouse pick and another powerhouse show is anything that Will's on. You should have bet more podcasts, VSiN Live and Bear Bets. Will, where could our listeners get your great information?
Yeah, you nailed it. Not the Will Hill on Twitter. Saturdays and Sundays on VSiN 4 to 7 Eastern, doing a live bet show, which is really good because you get to go through this stuff live and see if you can pick off some numbers, whether this team's in foul trouble or this team's racking up the fouls and you play the over. So those are fun shows to do. I'm on VSiN throughout the week. Should have bet more podcasts. So yeah, check it all out. Gold Boys Discord. Appreciate you having me on, and we'll have to do a little home and home here. I'm sure I'll be having you on and hitting you up to come on mine pretty soon.
'Tis the season. Make sure you guys check out the one and only Will Hill.